4 or 5 years ago, I started an organization called Women in Tech Africa because there are not many of us and we have to grow the numbers. A lot of my work was supporting women be at the forefront of technology advancement in Africa. So we started with 70 women in Ghana, and we're now across 30 African countries. This year, we were the UN General Assembly Week, and we picked up an award for a UN award for equals, which is an award for leadership in technology for women. So we've come far. But you see, I'm Theresa's granddaughter. I don't stop. So 2 years ago, we started what we call Women in Tech Week. Women in Tech Week, because we had such a large group of women as part of the Women in Tech Africa Network, we started a digital festival, which brings together something, the last 2 years, over 20,000 women across multiple countries. So it's simultaneous events that look at entrepreneurship, digital information, leadership, work-life balance, all the things that women need to be at the forefront of pushing the agenda of technology and women in Africa. So across Mauritius, Tanzania, Ghana, DR Congo, Nigeria, Gambia, Kenya, Malawi, Ethiopia, Belgium, Cape Verde, Mauritius, South Africa, Botswana, Ireland, France, Germany, women of African descent are standing up and are leading the pack. So here's the gist of my story. Now, the lessons that I've learned from my mother are really essentially about identity and standing in who you are. So every Christmas, my mom would do this thing where she'd make everything from scratch, right? So like cake, everything, spend her whole time in the kitchen. And I was about 10 years old when she looked at me and my dad and she said, I'm done. Done. So that's the journey from when my father became responsible for making sure we enjoyed Christmas. But part of that was just watching her back the trend of what she's expected to be and stand in her identity and say, this is who I am. I make no apology for it. And years later, her job, they transferred out of Accra, which means she got to spend less time with us, me and my sister and my father. And she came under a lot of pressure to leave her job. And she stood. Okay. And she stood in her identity and stood understanding that nobody was going to make her make the choices that she didn't want to make. And that is my legacy, right? Everywhere I go, when the culture says, as a woman, speak a little softly, be less opinionated, don't be too loud, don't have an option. I understand that the women that have come before me have stood in their confidence. And I then stand on that legacy. So here's what I leave you with. What my legacy, I hope and I believe, will be is not only for my children, but for all the women and all the lives I've touched with women in Tech Africa. Every woman we've opened the door for, every woman we've supported, every woman that we've leveraged, every speech I've given pushing technology in Africa, I believe that would be my legacy. And I work every day to make that legacy happen. The question I'd like to leave all of you with is, what is your legacy? Because death will come. What do you want to leave? What impact do you want to make in the world so that you would have touched lives? Thank you very much. My name is Ethel Cofie.
And as you've noticed, there's a talented young man who is illustrating the stories as we go along. His name is Welby Mensah, and you can find him on social media at Welby. And he will be drawing whatever they say, or I imagine that's what he's doing. So at this point, we'd like to invite to the stage Jamila Abdullahi. If you know the name Jamila Abdullahi, then you probably know that she is also a bilingual policy consultant. She speaks both French and English, and I hope she would speak some French while she's on stage today. I know her as a professional blogger. That's how I first met her. She has, over the last 10 years, curated content with her own business that she calls Circumspect. It's an award-winning digital platform. She is also an economist, a trained economist, and she excels at policy research analysis. She has a lot under her sleeve. She is literally a jack of many trades, or should I say a Jill of many trades. A round of applause for Jamila.
Okay, merci Kenny, c'est un plaisir d'être ici. Have I fulfilled the requirement? Awesome. Hello everybody. My name is Jamila Abdullahi, and my story is a little bit different from Ethel's because the key person in my life was actually my father. So I started using computers at the age of 4, meaning I started in 1990, which is very early for my generation. And that's because my father is an ICT educationist. And I remember sitting on his old Macintosh computer and playing a jigsaw puzzle of Snake. And sometimes I would sit on his lap while he was doing his work. He was a student, a computer science student. I think for me, that was very important. I call it my first time digital. And I think it was very important because I wasn't afraid to break anything. And I probably broke things, but it wasn't, don't do this because you're going to break that. And so that made me very open to exploring. And it became a theme throughout my life. So in high school, for example, in junior high school, for example, I got my email address in 2001, and I was one of the early people in my class to get my email address. And my dad had created it for me. It was jamilatu@yahoo.co.uk, very professional. That's my dad. And I was like, no, I'm 15 years old, so it has to be exciting_2001 @yahoo.com. And so that's what I used. But what I would do was I would go on the internet and I would go into Yahoo chat rooms. And at the time, I thought I was going to be a psychologist. And so I would give advice to people who were probably years older than me from around the world. And that was my thing. After junior high school, I moved to Wesley Girls High School, which is a boarding school here in Ghana in Cape Coast. And we didn't have internet access. We had a computer lab, but there was no internet cafe. And I'd been used to going to internet cafes every week to check my mail, to counsel my people all around the world. So I convinced the teacher, the computer science teacher, to let me run the internet cafe. So I think Wesley Girls must have been the first school to have a student-run internet cafe, and that was in 2004. And even after I left, we still had some students who were running the internet cafe. Now, fast forward to after SSS. I was working with a publishing company in Accra, and I was also taking courses at the Kofi Annan Center, which were software development courses. So the thing with my dad was like, he was like, technology is going to be the future, right? And both he and my mom are teachers and in education. And so for them, it was very important for myself and all my siblings to have the skills and the tools that we needed in order to be able to thrive in the economy and in the world. And so I was taking these software development courses and I hated it because I was not a coder. And yeah, I'm not a coder. But before that, I had taken a Cisco networking course, and that I really loved. The thought of figuring out how to troubleshoot if your computer is not working, where do you start? It's connections, because I think it's also about life, right? If there's something wrong, you need to connect with people and have a conversation. So that made sense to me. And fast forward to college. I did college in the United States, and as Kenny mentioned, I studied French. So I was studying abroad in France. And during that time, Facebook had just been opened beyond the US college scene, and it was just getting global, beginning to get global. And I used to talk a lot about things happening in Ghana and Africa with the economy. Like, that was my thing. I would take a news article and talk about it and have conversations with people. And I wanted to share my travels because I was seeing a lot of parallels between France of all places and Ghana. And so I was like, man, I need to share this with people. And that's how my blog Circumspect started. Now, people often ask me, what does circumspect mean? There is a word which means circumspect. It doesn't have an E at the end. And maybe sometimes we do fit into that. But for us, circumspect comes from two words. Circum, which is all round, and perspective, which is all round perspective. So that's what we do. We talk about issues related to Africa and Africans, anything and everything. And over the years, we've created a digital platform literally covering pretty much everything you can think about. And we've allowed other people to also share their stories on that platform. And for me, that's extremely important because, the proverb about if the lion doesn't tell its own stories, the hunter is going to tell it and it's going to glorify the hunter. And I think it's a very important thing for Africans to share their perspectives, not only on things happening in their countries, but also around the world, right? So in 2013, after I finished my master's in economics and international affairs, I started working with the African Development Bank in Tunisia, and later in Ivory Coast. But even though I had a project that I was supposed to work on, I kept being drawn into working on things related to digital marketing, digital information. And so I realized that there was a skills gap even for institutions that have the resources. So I decided to leave the bank. I left in 2015. I've been 3 years out now. And since then, Circumspect has really focused on addressing the digital skills gap. So what we do is we offer trainings primarily focused on social media, but we also do it on general digital tools. And the whole goal of that comes back to what my own experience was, because I had a positive first-time digital experience. And the reason why a lot of people are hesitant to move online is because they hear all these things about how negative it is, and so they don't want to experience that. And so by creating an environment where we not only make it a positive first-time experience for them, but also give them the tools to be able to navigate the online space, it means that hopefully in the next 10, 20 years, when internet access improves, when more businesses are online, these people will be running things because they already have the knowledge and they know how to navigate that space. And so for us, it's all about dwelling in curiosity, because I think curiosity is very important, especially for girls, to be able to move beyond the challenges. It's about learning from each other, and it's also about recognizing that things happen at a global level. So we're all about taking the tomatoes that life has handed us and making jollof, whether Ghanaian, Nigerian, or Sierra Leonean.
Thank you so much, Jamila, and we'll keep you in mind the next time we have jollof to eat for lunch. Our next speaker is Veronica. She is currently the Enterprise Business Solutions Manager for Vodafone Ghana. And because we're running out of time, I won't tell you all the other wonderful things she will have to say in her story. So a round of applause for Veronica.
Correction, I'm not a speaker. I'm trying to be one. Anyway, hello everyone. My name is Veronica once again. And I hope my story inspires aspiring women in technology. I would just like to take my seat so I can share with you. So my journey as a woman in technology began with a natural childhood biased feeling of or dream of becoming a medical doctor. But that was not to be, because my head spins at the sight of blood. I didn't want to have anything to do with blood. However, it actually gave me the opportunity to even follow my own passion of becoming a woman in technology. So with this, it actually gave me the feeling that I can actually pursue whatever dream I want to be. So I remember being a child and growing up as a young girl, I would rip apart or pull apart any electronic gadget that I laid my hands on. So if I see a set of box radio, I'll just pull it apart. And eventually, this actually got me the nickname Inspector Gadget at home. So my siblings would always refer to me as Inspector Gadget. You are doing your thing again, once again, right? But of course, this also came as a replacement cost to my father, because I couldn't paste them, perfectly back as the way they were before pulling them apart. So over time, my focus and my interest actually drifted to engineering. But there was another problem or another hurdle for me to overcome, and that problem was mathematics. I hated mathematics to the core. So I remember way back in junior high school, at the end of a mathematics course, I could score as low as 0/10. Can you imagine? So, but then that didn't stop me from going for my dream. I just gathered the courage and also developed the tolerance to learn how to master the mathematics formally. So after junior high school, I went to the senior high school. I pursued science, as usual. And over there too, I was able to make it through the final stage. Now, this also gave me the platform to pursue engineering course at the university level. So I actually enrolled in the Kwame Nkrumah University for a 4-year degree in Bachelor of Science. So, which after my 4-year degree in science, I was lucky to get a job at a telecom company. So my eye-opening experience, being a woman in technology, actually started at my first day of work. So I was very excited, very confident, not because I'm a female engineer, but a proud, engineer. So I worked basically to go and meet and greet my line manager. And then here comes this question: are you sure you are an engineer? Then I responded, yes, I am. Then there was a follow-up comment: you should be in the fashion industry and not in the engineering field. As if that wasn't enough, right? So my female colleagues, anytime we had jobs to do on site, they would ask me to stay back. They would want to go and fix the issue. But then I kept on pushing. Some of them called me names like, oh, Miss Ghana. Miss Ghana is coming to worry us again, coming to bother us again. But then I kept on, moving on and moving on. So through that experience, I learned a lot along the line, and that even spurred me to become a leader in technology. Not just to be an engineer, but, also have a voice to be at the round table in the boardroom. So that gave me the energy to also help other women, mentor other women to also, take up other leadership role. And today, I'm a proud woman in technology, leading a team of customer-obsessed engineers who are finding solutions to all sorts of challenges that some companies in Ghana face. And so my advice to aspiring women in technology here is very simple. Stay true to your passion and never relent on your pursuits. Thank you very much.
The first one that I'd like to ask you, I imagine that it will take all of our time, but what, in your opinion, does a young African woman need to know that will encourage her to consider a career in the tech industry? Who would like to go first? I knew Ethel would reach for the mic first.
That it's possible. I think that's the one thing, right? So, like as Veronica said, and if you probably know, all of us will have the story of someone who said, wait, you're a woman and you're doing tech, like why? You'll face difficulties. There will be the, barriers ahead of you. But I think that for me, it's always been the feeling that I could do it. And so no matter what happened and how things went, you just figured a way. So I think that's, for me, is the one thing, a belief in self, and the fact that there are now many more women before us. So when I was doing my degree, I couldn't count one woman that was in tech that I could look up to. We now have a generation of women in technology. So it's even better for the generation now, because actually there are people you can look at and point to and say, they've done it, they pushed boundaries, and so we can do it too.
I think as someone who got into technology in a non-traditional way, because I'm not trained in the field, I think it's important for young African women to know that it doesn't really matter whether or not you have hardcore technical skills. It's more about what you bring to the industry and also how you use the tools. Because if you notice, especially in the landscape for Africa, a lot of the work that people in the tech space are doing are also addressing issues on the social front, on the political front, in the business world. And so that's an opportunity for you to be able to plug in. And going forward, just looking at the future of work as well, we're going to need that. You're going to have those diverse skill sets. So don't consider it to be a disadvantage. If anything, it will put you in a very unique position to be able to offer unique insights when you do find yourself in the tech space. And beyond that, don't relent on learning, right? If you don't know something, you have the resource of the internet, of, as Ethel mentioned, of people before you. So take advantage of those resources and learn and apply and try things and experiment.
So I would say that tech is a must to have, and it's imperative our women pursue technology courses, because I have come to realize that women have the ability to do it. The only challenge is the confidence gap, and I know so many women are able to do great things. And also, the reason why women should also consider tech jobs is that technology jobs really pay. So comparing tech jobs to other careers, technology is one of the best paid jobs. And Ethel can, attest to that. So please don't give up on technology.
All right. We'll keep that in mind. I'll just ask one more question before we go to the audience. I noticed that when you made the comment about people calling you Miss Ghana, both Ethel and Jamila shook their heads, implying that they can relate to some sort of sexism in the workplace. So does anyone care to comment on that? How did you overcome that? How did you get people to start looking at you as you instead of as a woman?
Well, I think it's helpful for me that I had my father who was egging me on and, encouraging me. So from when I first took my first Cisco networking course, I was 15. And I was the only girl, and I was the youngest. Everyone else was like in their 20s. But for me, it was a challenge. It was like to prove them wrong, right? I don't really dwell so much on the sexism, because at the end of the day, it's like my work will speak for myself. My work will speak for itself. And so I think sometimes, yes, you should definitely be aware of the sexism, but don't take it to heart, and realize that the fact that you are a woman in the tech space or in whatever space it is that you find yourself, you bring a unique perspective. And if there are 200 men in that room, they probably will not have the same perspective that you as a woman are bringing. And that is actually your strength. So draw on that strength.
I suppose for me, earlier in my career, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but earlier on in my career, I conformed, right? So my first job out of university, I was building travel systems. I lived in the UK at the time. And it was, I figured out that in order for the boys to accept my work, I had to become one of the boys. And I don't necessarily believe in that anymore. But that's what I did at the beginning of my career, right? So I wore the the hoodie, the baggy pants, the things that I had to do. I swore like a sailor. I drank beer with the boys. I did what I needed to do. Now, I wouldn't necessarily give that advice anymore, but I suppose at the time that was what needed to be done. I think now it's better. I will say it's better just because there are more women in the workplace and there are more examples of. Listen, the first time I saw a woman in tech who wore high heels, her name was Laura Peterson. This is how like instrumental this was for me in my life. She was I think she worked for ThoughtWorks or something. She was like in these high heels and this green top, and like I ran after that woman. I was like, "Hi, like can I have a moment? Like I just want to ask you questions, right?" Because I'd never seen that before. Right, and I didn't know that I could wear high heels and wear skirts and still be taken seriously and still kick ass. Right, right. Excuse my French. Right. So I think it's better for the younger women. I think that it's less. You do no longer have to conform because there are many ways to stand up and stand out. You just have to keep going.
All right. So we'll take one question from the audience. Okay. There's a hand up at the back.
You didn't, I mean, how?
Failure, I did not make money.
Yeah, but it takes more than a year to build a business. So 1 year.
But if you're using your savings and your money runs out of it in a year, then what happens? You don't have money, you're broke. So you no longer have a business. Okay. Right? I could have had a longer runway if I had more money, right? So if I was in Silicon Valley, maybe I would have done 10 years with no money. Excuse for all the Silicon Valley people here, forgive me. Okay. But that's what I mean by failure, because in a year I could not get my company to break even.
Okay, so it's more a calculation problem, right? If you had calculated for 3 years, you probably had.
If I had money for 3 years, maybe I would have. Yes.
On that note, we come to the end of today's session on HerStories. A round of applause for our fantastic ladies. However, the
We're going to take 2 questions from this side and 2 questions from that side, and then we're going to wrap it up. Anyone? Oh, okay. Okay.
Hello, so my name is Laurie. Thank you very much for doing this. So my question is, earlier before we heard that it is a man's issue as well. And so I just want to know what you think could men do to support this movement, of women being in tech? Thank you.
Hi, Daniela here. I'm from the German government, and we support the e-skills for girls. I'd like to hear from you, what could governments, not only the German or the donors, what could other participants, stakeholders, private sector, and your government, what could they do to support more women in tech? Thank you.
Okay, more on this side then. Okay, then we're coming to answers. Let's take those two.
What can men do? Be supportive. Okay, so be supportive of the women in your workplace. So there's a thing called benevolent sexism, right? Where it's like, no, but you're a woman. I mean, you shouldn't be sleeping under the table and working all night. This is, you should be home because you're a fragile little being, right? And I think there are people there is the really bad, we don't think women are human, whatever, and then there is the other end where it's from a place, I don't think it's from a bad place, but it's just from a place of, I believe women should be taken care of and are fragile, so we really don't believe. I mean, you know this, Veronica, you sleep under the table, you work till 3 a.m. and then you go home. That's just what you do. And so if we could teach men to understand that especially the ones that are benevolent, that we're not not fragile. We have babies, we're not fragile, and we run businesses. Then, yeah. In terms of governments, I think that if governments can just support, provide services to online, so that the people in country are able to use technology more to do their daily interactions with government. The jump from people being used to technology and pursuing technology careers, I think, is really short. And so there's a thing there, I think.
I think I have the same response to both questions, and that is they should listen. It's really simple. Because I think most of the time what happens is when, and I've even seen this on a number of platforms that we're both on, which is for techpreneurs in Ghana or across Africa. And when women make suggestions, a lot of times men automatically trivialize it. And I've seen this has happened to me many times. I'm sure you guys can relate. And so it's just a question of listening, right? Listen without responding. I mean, just take a breath, count to 3, let the woman speak, and then maybe consider what she said. And same with regards to governments. I think what's happening right now, and not just governments or donors, but also we're seeing it with a lot of the tech organizations are coming into African countries saying they want to do women in tech, but there are people on the ground already doing it. Don't come and do something that's already being done. Find out how they need your support and then plug in there. And that's the only way we move forward. Because otherwise, if Ethel is able to do what she's done and it's taken her God knows how long to do it, and then you come from the UK and try to do the same thing without connecting with her, you're undermining what she has already done. So it's about listening and recognizing that there is talent within women and also on the continent. And if we share knowledge with each other, then we can all move forward together.
For our men, what we're asking you is, you need to create an enabling environment for women to thrive, because we believe that if we are comfortable at our workplace, we can give in our best, right? Because also a lot of women, find their way into the tech job, but 3 to 5 years along the line, they leave. And the problem is we are unable to retain them. The reason is they don't fit in. They feel they don't fit in there, especially women who go on maternity leave but unable to, return back to their jobs. And then also to the government, what I think the government can do in order to keep women in technology is to, over here in Ghana, we have about 3 months leave for maternity, right? If the government can, even support us to move it to 6 months, that would be, great. So women can have enough time for their babies when they go on on maternity leave, because some companies today do the flex time thing. So you could start work at 7:30 a.m. and close at 4:30 p.m. So you could spend more time with your family. That way, the woman is comfortable going to work because she believes that she has a flex time and also will be able to give out her best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, one more time. One more time with the ladies. Okay, so now you can go. Now you can go. Thank you so much. And that's incredible art right there on the side. Okay, so
respectively. Both of these amazing women are doing crazy things in the music scene in their respective countries, and also implementing women in music. So would you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. Like Benoit has said, my name is Kampire. I'm a DJ, artist, writer, based in Uganda. Yes.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I have got a cold, so I will sound a bit funny. But my name is Keezus, and I'm a DJ, a producer based in Ghana, and I mostly make electronic music.
Okay. So to jump straight into it, I guess I will ask, how did you get into music in the first place? Let's start with the basics. How did you start your music journey?
Well, I've always appreciated music. I think for most Africans, it's just, the soundtrack to our lives. But I think a lot of people can say that as well. But I guess I was that person who wanted to control the playlist at parties. And I got involved with some friends who were organizing Nyege Nyege Festival, which is an international music festival in Uganda. And we organized the first one. And part of building up towards the festival was about really creating spaces in Kampala and in Uganda where different kinds of music could be appreciated. So we listened to a lot of dancehall, Afro beats, both Ugandan and international, a lot of influence from Jamaica, from Nigeria, from the US, from the UK. a lot of influence from commercial radio. But when I first started playing music, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there weren't so many spaces where you could go out and listen to different kinds of things. So through organizing the festival, my friend was like, "Oh, you should come and play at one of our parties." And just the idea that I could listen to some of my favorite music, like Congolese soukous from the 60s that I love, and Portuguese kuduro and Angolan kuduro, and music from South America that I love so much and love to dance to and think are great, but you never get to hear them in the club. And so when I played my first set, people just responded so well that I've kind of been doing it ever since. Yeah.
I got into music in college, and I started out also just wanting to control the playlist, as you said. Like, I love music so much, and after a while, like, I just got tired of hearing the same things, like, all over, from every party to the next, and like in the clubs and on radio, and I found myself gravitating more towards bass heavy sounds. So that's how I got into dubstep and like grime and all that. The music had some texture and some diverseness that I couldn't really find in like most of the popular Afro tracks that were played here. So I just kind of stuck to that, and I've been going in that like direction ever since. Yeah.
Okay, so exploring different music genres that are not popular in your respective countries, how has that journey been, and how necessary do you think it is to have diversity in music and to have like different subgenres and different subgroups or subcultures for all of these different music? Because, for example, if you're in Accra, the same people that you see in like the popular clubs wouldn't be the same people that you will see at parties or events that you play at. And I'm sure it may probably be the same that people you see at Nyege Nyege won't be the same people that you see in popular Ugandan clubs. So how do you fit yourself into this space, and how do you make the subcultures thrive?
I think that what you've said is true. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, the people you would see at Nyege Nyege Festival and at the parties weren't the same people you would see at mainstream clubs. But I think what has really become special about the festival is now that even mainstream middle-class Ugandans who aren't necessarily adventurous musically come for the festival and are exposed to something new. So I think that that's really why we do what we're trying to do, because to me it's okay, yes, it's important that those connections are made between, you know, South American music or Angolan music, like I mentioned, but a country like Uganda, which is so diverse, it has over 70 different ethnic groups, refugees from all over the world, and each of those ethnic groups have their own cultural music, which you hear at weddings and parties for that particular ethnic group, but you never hear it on the radio. So for me, that's a massive shame. And I think that part of the reason why Ugandan music or East African music is not necessarily dominant globally is because we haven't tapped into that diversity and that rich cultural heritage and history. And I think the same applies for music of the past, the pop music that my parents used to dance to, the Congolese soukous, which was such a huge influence globally that even now, you know, there's not many African pop songs that you hear without a soukous guitar influence that has spread globally. And yet, if young producers in Uganda are trying to imitate, you know, Jamaican music or American trap, instead of tapping into, you know, this, like I said, this rich cultural history, then we're really missing out on so much of what makes us special, I think.
I think that's quite interesting, but also at the same time, like from my perspective, I find that especially for the Ghanaian music, we still have that. There's this image of what African music sounds like, or what Ghanaian music sounds like to the West, right? And in the sense of genre diversity, it's been stuck in a certain like time frame, like between maybe the 70s and the high life music from the 60s, that people still are not in tune with what's happening now, with like the changes in the music now. So I feel like if we manage to find a way to push like the newer stuff in addition to the 70s music, the 60s music, then in that case, like, we would grow as a culture a lot more and not just be stuck in this frame of like, this is what Ghanaian music sounds like. Because I get that every time, like, you meet someone who's not from here and they're like, oh, I love that Ghanaian music, and I know exactly what they're talking about, you know. Yeah. So just to add on to what she said.
So then for diversity to thrive, is it merging what makes us us with the outer influence that we get, or is it just maintaining and building up on what we have?
I think it's all of those things. I think it's all of those things. I think that when you look at some of the quote-unquote underground musical cultures which have created so much influence, like the scene in the UK, the reason why their music is so rich is because it draws on all the various immigrant communities that live in the UK. So Jamaican sound system culture is huge, and now like West African Afrobeats is absolutely dominating the UK scene. But if those various subgroups aren't able to like mix and talk to each other and grow and compete, if, you know, Jamaican sound system culture is not influenced by UK funky, by Niger Afrobeats, then we're just repeating the same patterns, the same boring stuff, and we're not growing, like Kiza said.
Yeah. Very true.
So then you actually do believe that there should be some sort of stability in the diversity?
Yes, stability, but growth. Like, when you're stable, you still can merge things. Like, so that's how like different genres are formed and different subcultures come alive and grow. It's because you tap into different things, and in like that vein, you're not just maybe appropriating from cultures, but you're giving back to those cultures as well. And just because music is a universal language, so you can like relate to something that these people do and take from that and build into what you already have, right? So that's what I mean.
Okay. And in pushing this agenda of diversity in music and of promoting the different genres that are in music, what part do you play as a woman in this? Because I feel that music is quite a male-dominated field, like a lot of fields. And being a woman pushing a different genre or a different type of music in your country, how has that been?
I think that anytime you allow diversity into the music scene, you get a different perspective. And the fact that music and the DJ culture has been so male-dominated means that we haven't heard the perspective of women. And the fact that, you know, more and more people are realizing that that diversity, gender diversity, is an important thing, means that we're now hearing so many new perspectives in terms of DJing, and women DJs who are really pushing the boundaries, queer DJs and queer scenes who are pushing the boundaries, and even the fact that, like, because we are a minority in the scene, it means that when I travel to Ghana, it means that people are like, oh, you must meet Kiza, she's also a fantastic DJ. And then you create this network where we're promoting each other and pushing each other and connecting, which I think helps everyone.
Yeah, true. I also feel like one way you can foster growth as a minority in the music scene is just to make sure that you're working with people that share your values and share your vision. And like, I love working with female non-binary promoters, like agents, all these people, because somehow it creates this safe space and it allows you to feel comfortable. I think one of the reasons why women, especially in some parts of the world, don't feel welcome in a lot of these music spaces or male-dominated spaces is because they don't feel safe. It's because like male energy or masculine energy can be a bit overpowering or overwhelming sometimes, and like the whole thing of even getting into music, like there's this perception of, oh, you're going to be around these people that are like this, or like, you know, there's perceptions already, and it's hard to be in that space if you don't feel like you're welcome, you know. So it's great to have collectives that are like mainly female or like non-binary or queer, and creating that community of people that you're comfortable enough to grow in, you know, and just as well, basically.
How is your scene like for you? How are you using your position to introduce more women into the scene and more non-binary people into the scene? Because as you said, if you have a lot more women on board, it creates a sort of safe space. And I want to know how you are using your position to create a safe space for other women to come on board, because I do know that you are also involved in like certain feminist activities.
Yeah, I think by virtue of being a woman in this space, when other women see women on the decks, they're just like, oh wow, that opens up possibilities that I also never considered. And so often when I get off the decks, women come up to me and they're like, oh my god, I've always wanted to DJ. I think it's so cool that you're doing it. I'm just scared, or I don't know why I've never done it. So just being visible, I think makes a huge impact. But also, you know, trying to basically demystify DJing, because it's a thing that like a lot of people are not entirely sure what you're doing up there other than playing songs. And then there's like technical equipment and like you said, a lot of masculine energy in which, which can be very intimidating to women. And then there's also the issue of just club culture and safety and women's personal safety. So even as I just wanted to play music basically and hear it on loudspeakers, but then you have to consider, you know, how safe are women in my city? How safe are women to come to events? Do they feel comfortable coming to these events where I'm playing? So inspired by other initiatives around the world, basically, we have attempted a couple of events. One is called Pussy Party, which is specifically for women and the queer community to basically go out and not have to worry about their personal boundaries. They shouldn't have to worry about getting yelled at in the club or getting grabbed. A lot of women's experience is that if someone harasses them in the club and they go and tell the bouncer, then the bouncer doesn't care, or, you know, the woman is the one who gets thrown out. So creating a space in which women who attend know that if they have an issue, we have their back, basically. And that we're trying to curate an audience in which people understand that, you know, you can't touch people without their consent, and that consent is essential, basically, and people's bodies are their own. And hoping that through creating those spaces that it also influences the mainstream as well.
Yeah, it's, as she said, like, I think one of the most important things is visibility. And I know, like, obviously, with the way I brand myself, it's hard to assume I'm female anyway. But yeah. Yeah, that's for personal reasons, but visibility is very important. And on top of that, like, not just being visible, but being visibly amazing at what you do. Like, I feel like one of the worst things is having women get into music with this notion of female DJs, which already I feel kind of lowers the bar in a certain sense, because they're like, oh, so far as you're female, it's enough that you're like, you can't be average and be female and still be celebrated. And I feel like that's not like one of the best ways to push the women in the scene, because then you have these men who are already not super open to ideas of that, and they're standing back and judging these people for being put in the limelight when they're like, I feel like I'm a guy and I'm better than this person, but they're being put into the limelight because they're women, and it creates a certain level of what's the word, like yeah, I can't speak words today. But yeah, it doesn't push the agenda of women in the music, because your male counterparts don't think as highly of you as they think of their peers, because they feel like, I can do way better than you. Like, so I just feel like we have to put that notion out there that you can not just be a woman in music, but you have to be amazing. Like, you have to put the bar on the same level as everyone else is, you know, so that people respect you for being good at what you do. And yeah, mostly that as well. So just being good and visibly good, and not just average at what you do.
So I know, for instance, for you, you have championed the cause of not having tags on certain awards or certain, prizes as, okay, best female DJ. In creating representation and in creating diversity, how important it is, do you think, that there shouldn't be that characterization? It should just be best DJ or best musician or best songwriter without putting that tag on it.
Yeah. I think it's like very important, because it's a psyche thing. It's like, I'll use this example. I was in, like, I've grown up most of my life here in Ghana, and over here it's not common to have women ride bicycles, right? So like it's mostly a male thing. But I went into some parts of Europe, and like, everyone rides bicycles. There's nothing like a female rider or a male rider. Everyone grows up being taught how to ride a bicycle. So when you see someone who rides a bike, you don't have this thing in your head like, oh shit, this is so amazing because she's a woman. You just know that this person, like, it's kind of like breathing. It's so normalized. So I feel like if we start taking off the labels of best female, best male, whatever, and we just even out the playing field, people would grow up with the notion of, yeah, this is normal, I can do this. And it's not going to be this whole big thing that they're getting into, and like feeling like, oh yeah, I'm doing something, even though it's special, yes, but you have to be especially good and not just get into it as a female and be put on an uneven field just because of that label that you put there. Yeah, so basically.
Okay. So on creating spaces for other genres to thrive, and then for other genders to also thrive, how has technology been used for both of you to help create that space? How have you used it to connect with other women and with other non-binary people and with other people who also DJ the genres that you DJ?
Yeah, I think that as DJ equipment becomes cheaper, as internet becomes cheaper, then all of us are better able to connect. So something like SoundCloud has really like changed the landscape for DJs and curators and producers as well, especially in the global South, who have less access to mainstream channels. The fact that commercial music is controlled by like maybe 2 or 3 major labels affects the global music industry. But also in Uganda, for example, to get your music on radio, you have to know the right people, you have to pay the right people. So the fact that you can just put your music up on SoundCloud just makes it so much easier. And then, just giving women access to, DJ equipment, access to spaces when they can try and, with no pressure, see if it's a fun thing or see if they have any talent at it or see if that's something that they want to do and continue doing is very important.
Yeah. The internet has been instrumental in, personally, in everything that I've done, especially because I'm out here in the middle of this a totally different culture and very interested in bass music, which is not very common here. Like, the internet is how I discover new music. It's how I connect with people that have the same passions as me, and that's, I think, one of the most important things, finding a community of people around you that like the same things that you like. They don't have to be physically present. It's all online. Everything's happening online. You find producers and DJs that love playing the same music that you like to play, and then they connect you to these people that are putting on these parties who want you to come over and play because they're interested in your sound. So I think everything is a bit easier just because of the internet. Yeah.
And what do you think is the cost and benefit of this, of trying to diversify sound, of trying to diversify the scene?
I mean, I don't think there are any costs. I think that the quote-unquote pioneers are the ones who have to bear the costs, basically. So having to be visible as a woman DJ. One of my first big sets that I play, my friend who's an MC who had never heard me play was like, "Oh yeah, you're great. Let me MC over your set." And then through most of my set, he just kept yelling, "Woman power, woman power." And I was like, "Okay, this is great, but can you please put the mic down?" So, there's, to an extent, it's hard being, a minority in an industry, but hopefully we're making it easier for other people. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the benefits of having a very diverse scene is just having spaces where people can express themselves differently and not have to go into the same spaces that playing the same music. Because it gets tiring, honestly. It gets tiring to hear the same commercial songs on radio, in the taxis, back into the clubs, and then back home when you're going home, you listen to the same songs in the taxi because the driver is playing that. You just need to have those different spaces that are educating you on different sounds across the world, and I think that's a very important thing, to open up your mind as well, because it's a language. You're just immersing yourself in different cultures, and it's opens up your mind to different things that you wouldn't have thought about.
Last thing, what for you? Where were the places that you had to find your space, your safe space? Where did you have to look? How far did you have to look, or how long did you have to look for you to finally find this space that you can be free to create, to feel the music, and to share your music?
I think for me, the space found me, and that's the reason why I'm a DJ. So the fact that people responded so well to my set and didn't put any limitations on what music I can play, and didn't say, "Oh, she actually doesn't know how to mix at all yet," which I didn't when I first started to play. People were just like, "Oh, you're a great selector," your songs are the songs you chose are amazing, and that gave me the confidence to like continue and to keep playing.
I think I'm still trying to find my my safe space, but yeah, I'm continuously growing, and I feel like it would find me soon. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Can I just say?
Yes.
Can I just say one more thing? You asked the question earlier, and I didn't get a chance to put in my 2 cents, but it was basically about the tokenizing of saying female DJ, female artists, and I think that a lot of it's become more trendy to have more women DJs, and a lot of male promoters see a woman and they see dollar signs, and they see people are going to come because they're curious. And I think that a lot of people have come up to me and asked whether or not there should be more female-only events, or should we have events which have only female DJs. And I just wanted to say that if we're trying to create equality, then just start programming 50-50 men and women artists. Don't now be like, oh, I have to create an event only for women artists, because to an extent you're creating you're ghettoizing or tokenizing, women and diversity. So if we want to see equality, then part of that is just imagining what equality looks like and doing the thing. And yes, women-only spaces. I've talked about Pussy Party. They have their role, which for me is creating safe spaces for women. But also, we just need to see more equality, like actual equality.
Thank you very much.
And also, both of us will be playing tonight at the closing party, so you guys should come.